and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Chad McCanna.
And I'm Hyle Russell. And Chad, a happy Cobcock Day to you.
Oh, and to you, my friend. Let us all gather around the Cobcock Rock and speak of Cobcock's past.
Yes. It is Cobcock Day, which, to the uninitiated, it's a holiday that we have, resurrected on DK Vine. It's an ancient tradition that was...
resurrected, yeah.
It was lost to the sands of time, but... a few years back, we rediscovered it. And it turns out, because of, time travel or whatnot, it was actually inspired by the game we'll be discussing this week.
Mm-hmm. That is Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. And we've got a...
Oh, boy.
Yeah, there's a lack of symmetry between the two of us as far as our awareness of the game or our experience with the game goes.
Which is surprising because this is a game that's 11 years old. So,
and it's a core Donkey Kong series game.
It is the main console iteration of Donkey Kong in the GameCube era. So the fact that you haven't really played it, it's kind of... I understand why you haven't played it, and we'll get into those reasons. But it's kind of staggering to me that it's not even just like this. You've never even had a dalliance with it. You've never, experimented with Jungle Beat.
I have experimented as far as the Wii version goes with the new play control.
Oh, that does not count. That is okay.
I know you're a purist, and I will cop to the fact that there is a massive black hole in my Donkey Kong Country timeline, my personal DKU.
I think you mean you will cob to the fact.
I will both cock, and cop to the fact. I would love to see a buddy cop film starring Cobcock. It would star Cobcock and, let's say, David Schwimmer.
Hey, David Schwimmer is doing a great job as Robert Kardashian in the O.J. Simpson story on the FX network.
I've been seeing Hulu promos for that, and they're like, look, there's no way you're going to get me to re-up a cable package, and this is like the last thing you should try. This is their like scorched earth policy. Like, this is all we have to try and get him to repair his cut cord, but. Yeah, I have zero interest in watching the ins and outs of Judge Ito and just.
Judge Ito hasn't shown up yet, and I'm really hoping Margaret Cho plays him.
Margaret Cho or Alex Borstein playing her "He Look Like a Man" character from Mad TV.
It's not racist. It's just not racist. No. How could it be?
Not.
How could it be? So, speaking of racism, we're going to be discussing our opinions on the only Japanese Donkey Kong game made for main consoles since Donkey Kong Country. And I say racism in light jest because there is a certain... I don't want to say... There's some misunderstandings in this era of DK Vine where we attributed a lot of the wackiness of Jungle Beat to this purely Japanese aesthetic. I don't really know.
Oh, you're referring to Japan Magic Creative.
Japan Magic Creative, yeah. And there was that.
I think that was one of mine, actually.
Yeah, well, there's the sense that you could only make a good Donkey Kong game in the West, which I don't agree with now. And I think Payon proved us wrong a couple times over with their output during this same era. But we'll get into all of that. I guess we need to just start at the beginning to really understand Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, because it is the most controversial, I think, entry in the Donkey Kong series, even more so than Donkey Konga and Donkey Konga 2, because while those games are just shit, and it's pretty much universally agreed that Kongas are shit, Jungle Beat is divisive.
Hundreds of Donkey Konga fans have just turned off the podcast now.
That's fine. That's fine. They were actually controlling the podcast with bongos, so good luck trying to figure that out.
Yeah, they keep clapping, and all we're doing is feeling like we're buoyed by their support.
I know. It just makes us stronger. Pan. So Jungle Beat is beloved by some and reviled by others. And honestly, it's a game that I've done a 180 on in recent years, but it's also a game that I still harbor a lot of ill will towards. So really, you have to understand Jungle Beat from a hardcore Donkey Kong Country fan's perspective. You have to understand the politics behind it. So let's go back. Let's go back to 2004, Chad. E3 2004. This is about a year and a half after the buyout. A little bit longer than that. But
the buyout you're referring to is basically Nintendo passing on their option to purchase Rare. They were a 49% owner, so Rare essentially went up on the market, and they were ultimately, of course, bought by Microsoft.
That's right. And so E3 2004, we walked in with a lot of uncertainty, but we also thought this is going to be our first chance to really see if Nintendo's doing anything with the Donkey Kong license. And boy, were they doing something with the Donkey Kong license. So
indeed.
We originally got our first taste of Jungle Beat through this off-centered, blurry camera shot of the E3 show floor of that year. And this was a big year for DK Vine, too, because we rebranded that year as Donkey Kong Universe. At E3 time, we debuted our neon look, our ghastly neon appearance.
Oh, God, the one that, like, it's still being felt on the forum today by burning people's retinas with user avatars.
Yeah, the neon avatars inspired by Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road was pretty much the only good thing to come out of that design. It was wretched. It was pretty bad, but
you realize you're talking to the person who created that design, right?
I know, but you got better at it. We were all terrible. We were all shit at things we tried, back in the day. We got better.
Yeah. It was pretty terrible.
I was a shit writer, and now I'm just a bad writer, and I feel like that's progress.
That is progress.
So,
I hope you've put that on your LinkedIn.
I couldn't think of any words for my LinkedIn, which shows just how bad of a writer I am. So, our first taste of this, and we were all like congregated back in DK Vine. Like we had taken, you and I had taken like a couple years off the main staff roster. We were like off doing other things, just taking a break. We did our webcomic. We wrote for the Rubber Chicken, Alistair's website for a while.
That's
and
right.
We came back to DK Vine. I came back in a more full-time capacity than you did. We were also gearing up for Elvis and Slick Monty at the time. So we were kind of had our fingers in a lot of pies. But
yeah.
So we were all at DK Vine for E3 2004, and there we first saw this blurry camera shot of the show floor. This was about a day, I think, before the show floor actually opened. So this was before any news actually broke, but we saw the Donkey Kong logo. And by this point, we already knew Donkey Konga was coming, but this looked to be something different. And at first, we read the title because we couldn't actually make it out. We read it as Donkey Kong Golf.
Okay, I was wondering. I couldn't remember if it was the Coconut Crackers E3 or this one that brought us Donkey Kong Golf. But okay,
it was this one. So, which has become a sort of meme every E3 sense that Donkey Kong Golf.
Oh man, how much I would have loved to have had Donkey Kong Golf instead of this. Prosthetic fingers for everyone.
So. I think I don't know how many, maybe it was 12 hours, we were operated under the idea that it was Donkey Kong Golf. And then there are other theories. Maybe the game is called Donkey Kong Island, something, whatever. But later on, we discovered it was Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. And so we thought it was just a new name for Donkey Konga. Which makes sense, because why would they be developing two games that utilize the DK bongos? That would just be absurd.
That's insane, Hyle. Especially trying to do something that's not a music game with a musical instrument peripheral.
Yeah, so, but the next day we learned the truth. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat was developed by EAD Tokyo, and it was a platforming game that utilized the bongos to move. And so I don't even remember how I felt at this time. There was a lot of confusion because I guess I was glad to see it was a side-scrolling platform game, and at the same time, knowing that it was controlled with the bongos, I was kind of disheartened. But yeah. I think the general mood at the time was, well, it's not Donkey Konga. We're not just getting Donkey Konga, so let's just wait and see how this goes, guys. This might be good. This might be good.
We were still sort of uncertain with Rare having been sold to Microsoft about the fate of the Donkey Kong franchise. Would it really just be these offshoot kind of musical titles, or just him making an appearance in a Mario sports game or Mario Kart? We didn't know if there would ever be a platforming franchise again.
Yeah, that's right. And, it's... I don't know. I remember that initially the screenshots looked pretty bland to me. And I think this would be a good point to bring out the general aesthetic of Jungle Beat, which is basically an ant farm, I guess.
That's the phrase I was going to use, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because really, to make Jungle Beat work, I guess, they decided they had to zoom out, do extreme zoom outs, so you could see the whole immediate playing field.
And yet, when they did that extreme zoom out, you always have a full size Donkey Kong in the corner for some reason.
I guess they just want to show off their model at all times, or maybe they he's very expressive in this game, and arguably to its detriment, or to his character's detriment. But I don't know. Maybe they just. I don't really see how it helps the gameplay at all to be able to see him. I don't know, but it's a decision they went with, and it's weird, and it didn't really translate well in early screenshots because it looked. I remember you made the comment, Chad, that you can tell Rare is no longer making the backgrounds because it looked decidedly less detailed. And having played through it all 100%, the original GameCube version at least. I don't necessarily have a problem with the way the game looks. It's actually, in a lot of ways, pretty true to how environments in a Donkey Kong game are supposed to look. Very naturalistic. They didn't go overboard too much.
They misunderstood the camera, but you're right. It is an attempt at a natural environment. Because I've only played the one on the Wii, the port that came later, where you could actually
new play control,
but it does have the same aesthetics. Of course, I haven't played it as extensively as you did on your forum feature, the Slush Fund. So I'll need to defer to you on things like this. Are there a lot of those floating platforms that are typical of this same development team's work in the Mario series?
There are floating platforms from time to time. They tried to keep them limited, though. You can tell they made an effort to keep things more logical, and I think that may have been a direction from Miyamoto on high, because it's something that's carried on into the retro games, all based on what Rare started. That in Donkey Kong games, you don't have the more obstacle course driven Mario style. You have a naturalistic world that everything has a rhyme or reason for being there. So. Mm-hmm. I definitely have a feeling now, especially knowing what we know about Miyamoto and what directives he's given Retro. I could see that definitely coming from him, especially since it's been made clear that the people actually developing this game didn't give a shit about Donkey Kong.
Aside from the fact that Donkey Kong's in it, there's very little other connective tissue with the rest of the Donkey Kong Country series.
We'll get to that, my friend. We'll get to that.
We do have a number of listener calls that we should pepper throughout. Should we take one?
Let's take the first one, sure.
All right. I was going to play it anyway, but asking permission was a courtesy.
Oh, well, don't I feel silly? No, I don't want to hear it.
Hey, DKU crew. Scott Allen France calling in. Staff, but I was curious what angle Hyle would take in making fun of my name. It's just staring you right in the face. Anyway, calling in about Jungle Beat. I think a question that comes up on the forums is, okay, so you have Donkey Kong Country, and one of the main theses of DK Vine is that Donkey Kong Country is something of a reboot, a separate series from the original arcade games. And then people look at Jungle Beat, which is very different from Donkey Kong Country, and they wonder, why don't we consider that just some kind of a reboot or a separate series? I think that kind of dovetails into the thought that maybe we should just consider it some kind of a dream or some kind of crazy drug trip, some way to not have to deal with the series, not have to think about it. So I guess my question is, why do we not do that? Why is it so important that we consider Jungle Beat part of the Donkey Kong Country tradition? Bit of a softball question, but I think it's good for the younglings to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks, guys. Love the show. Love your work. Love you personally. Bye.
Aw.
Well, we love you too, Saf. That is, of course, the Saf, one of our longest-standing forum scholars.
Yeah, he is the resident DK Vine legal expert. Like, he will take the concept of the Donkey Kong universe, and he will write these massive, entertaining, but informative posts about how the Donkey Kong, like, how what we determine as part of the Donkey Kong universe, how that legally holds up. And he's actually
not legally in terms of the outer the laws of man, but rather the intricate set of rules and criteria that we've constructed to define the coverage jurisdiction of our website.
Yeah, he's actually been one of the biggest allies we've had as far as explaining to people, no, it all holds up. Look, we actually do have a system in place. It's not just our whims. Like, I want Goldilocks and Little Bear in the Donkey Kong universe. Whoa, golly!
Look at the goldfish! There's a goldfish!
Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks. And no, I would never make fun of your name, Saf. My name is Hyle. I had teachers in middle school giving me the Hitler salute when they did roll call. I would never make fun of somebody's name.
I would love to see, some like in an age of cell phone cameras,
I know, right?
In the back of the class.
I could have made so much money. I could have sued the hell out of the. Oh man, I wouldn't need DK Vine Patreon right now. So I would just be a self-financing billionaire. Just like
Hitler.
Just like Donald Trump. Thanks, Mussolini. So anyway.
Look, Mussolini, if I have to be one of the Axis powers, I think he was the classiest. I don't like that Hitler stuff. I never approved of the mustache. Joseph Stalin, same deal. Trump 2016.
It's because he can't comb over a mustache. He can't like bring his hair down far enough to make the little mustache.
Right. It just won't cover my lip.
Plus, he knows the Jews are great negotiators, so he would never gas the Jews.
Huge fan of the whole culture. Trump 2016.
So, look, okay. We're dating this show. We are dating it horribly.
Is this an evergreen?
It's a spotlight episode, Chad.
All right.
So, that's a great question, Saf. And,
people in the future will be wondering, who's Donald Trump?
There won't be a future. It's going to be a radioactive husk of a planet here in a couple of years. So, Saf, good question. And I think it's really because you look at the arcade games and you look at Country, and it's such a radical reinvention from what you had. Jungle Beat isn't actually that radical of a reinvention. They have their own characters, and yes, the controls are very different, but stylistically, it's pretty similar to Donkey Kong Country. It definitely has its roots in Donkey Kong Country more so than the arcade series.
Yeah.
The fact that it even stars the Kev Bayless designed Donkey Kong, I think, yeah, he might be a lot more...
Partially Kev Bayless designed. It was a collaboration.
Okay, fair enough. But, yeah, he might be a little bit more bombastic, but it is still the rare Donkey Kong running around in this game. Mm-hmm. And I think the rare Donkey Kong... I think the visual design, more than anything, is what we have to go on. It's the reason why the early Game & Watch games weren't considered part of the Donkey Kong universe, even though they were concurrent with the Donkey Kong Country series.
But Game & Watch Gallery 4 was.
Right. So, these are the reasons. And yes, it was a softball question, but thanks for calling. It's great to hear you call in.
By the way, the crazy drug trip theory, I even went as far on our old Donkey Kong universe design. We had an image gallery, and there was a piece of key art for every game gallery. And the one that Aussie Ben did most of them, and they were fantastic. But the one that I did for Jungle Beat was him panning a bottle of Robitussin straight into his mouth.
Yeah. And there's let's explain why the crazy drug trip thing comes up. Because during the course of this E3 2004, as we saw in more and more screenshots, we were just generally befuddled with the imagery we were seeing. okay, like the Donkey Kong Country series has some, pretty silly, crazy things in it, but it's always kind of been grounded in, I guess, Western animation or, folklore. Like, okay, bears running a general store, whatever. There's this, the craziest thing might be the banana birds, Mm-hmm. But, okay, so we were seeing screenshots for this game of rats gnawing on Donkey Kong's head while Donkey Kong was sweating in terror. And you see a screenshot like this, and you're just like, what? Huh? So we saw more and more like weird-ass imagery, and mm-hmm. I think this was during Chad McCanna, the college years. So you naturally suggested he was downing bottles of Robitussin. Mm-hmm. And going on crazy hallucinatory drug trips.
Yeah, look, there's a time and a place for everything, and it's called Donkey Kong Jungle Beat.
So yeah, it led to the meme that this, or the DK Vine meme, that this was Donkey Kong on just an extended bender, and anything we see in this game has no bearing on the actual reality of the Donkey Kong universe. It was just all a hallucination. And there's still people.
That's my bigger sticking point, though. It's not really the Western influenced styles. I don't mind if Cobcock falls asleep and he has a big snot bubble coming out. I mean it's an anime trope, and it's a little strange to see it, but I could live with it. It's the fact that Donkey Kong's, since Rare had the series and kind of rebooted it in Donkey Kong Country, like a soft reboot, they established this Donkey Kong as a carefree, kind of fun-loving adventurer who only really gets aggressive when you fuck with him. And yet, in this game, he just wanted to beat the shit out of everything, and you were rewarded for helping him do that.
Yeah, well, post 9/11, Chad, military aggression was in vogue, might equaled right, and I think a few years later, Donkey Kong regretted his vote for military action in the faraway lands. It anyway, yeah. So,
well, yeah. Would you say that he accomplished that mission?
I would say mission accomplished, definitely.
Okay.
I haven't played through the entirety of the new play control version, but I hear in the new ending he is wearing a flight suit with the codpiece. So
good. They got him on that crocodile carrier.
So anyway, yeah, it can't be a drug trip though, because elements have been referenced from Jungle Beat. Actually, not much. There was a Smash Brothers stage, and there's been certain stylistic inspirations carried over into the retro games. But actually, everything in Jungle Beat and new play control version Jungle Beat are kind of isolated. Nothing really ever carried over. So I guess you could still make the argument that, this is just a drug trip. But, we've got to keep it open, guys. If Hoofer or any of the other characters ever come back, you got to throw that drug trip theory out the window. So it's safer.
And I guess what would the logical inference be? Is Hoofer actually Ramby, and he's just so cough syruped out of his mind that he thinks it's a ram?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe he's just like in Funky's broom closet, and this is all just like.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have an unreliable narrator in a game like Conker's Bad Fur Day, where you know that it's a framing device, but when the entire game is potentially an unreliable narrator, and then you have to start inferring basically every experience from the moment you turn on the thing. You have to interpret it in different ways. Everyone's going to have a different interpretation, and then your whole concept of this shared universe really starts to form cracks, and we don't want that.
Right. Keep it simple, stupid. That's really my motto. And speaking of Kiss,
some say Occam's razor, some go with that.
Yes, but speaking of Kiss, that might come into play when we talk about the characters. I was doing a build up to later in the show, Chad.
Okay. I just didn't want you to insult our audience, but sure. In the interest of a joke.
In the interest of a joke, I will insult anybody. So
you hear that, stupid?
But I think the biggest question that we were having during this time, this period of uncertainty for the Donkey Kong universe, but the Donkey Kong wing of the Donkey Kong universe, where was Diddy? Where was Diddy in these screenshots? Where were the Kremlings? Where were the animal buddies? And we didn't see them at E3 2004. Ultimately, we wouldn't see them at all in this game, but we were still hoping that, maybe we're just not seeing screenshots of them. Maybe, they would something familiar would appear somewhere in the game. I mean, this was a Donkey Kong game. How could they not? I mean, Diddy, Cranky, K. Rool, Rambi, Ellie, they all appeared in Donkey Konga. So, it didn't seem like a far-fetched idea that we would see something familiar in this game.
It's not like Nintendo was completely washing their hands of anything that Rare introduced to the canon.
Right. But, I don't know. A couple months after this, Nintendo Online Magazine in Japan did an interview with the producer, and I'm going to botch this name, so forgive me. Takeo Shimizu?
Yeah, Takao Shimizu.
Takao Shimizu, and the director Yoshiaki Kozumi?
Yoshiaki Koizumi. Yep, that's pretty good.
Banjo-Kazooie.
Reading Japanese it's sort of like Spanish. When it's translated into Western characters, you can basically they don't have different pronunciations for their vowels, so you can kind of, as long as you know what an O is and what an I is, you can just read it out. But of course you have to know what those vowel sounds are.
Yeah, and there's way too many vowels together. Anyway. For my Western tongue, it's like I don't like botching names, again, because my name is Hyle, so I get Hyle, I get Kyle, so I try to do right by people's names, and I feel like a failure. I feel like...
Well, you've let poor Mr. Shimizu down, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to offend him. So, okay, this is where...
when discussing his terrible game.
Right, let me read to you what this shithead said. So, Mr. Kozumi said that in this interview, when they brought up the characters, and if we would see any characters, familiar returning characters in the game, he said, all the characters outside of Donkey Kong and the banana are completely original. We don't really feel the past look of Donkey Kong was fresh enough for today. We really gave our new development team the chance to really create something unique and stylish.
Well, they did that.
And then he also said, we don't need a superfluous story for this, did we? And then he smiled. The only thing Donkey Kong needs is to be the best and become king of the jungle.
I love that. I hate that. But I think it's not even a misinterpretation of his character. It's a willful ignorance of what Donkey Kong was by that point.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so 3 things here. We could do a 5-part podcast series on these few sentences alone, because these were probably the most influential quotes in a decade worth of DK Vine, because it inspired the rage that this interview inspired was off the Richter scale. I mean, it was just... I really think, like, at the top, 5 moments of DK Vine, this would be maybe 2 or 3, because it definitely fed into the pure asshole-ish rage of the community and the staff. I'm not going to wash my hands of this. I was part of this during this time. It was just... Suddenly, we had an enemy, and it was EAD Tokyo. It was Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. It was Nintendo itself. It was... And these people, again, willfully misreading what Donkey Kong is, but also having spite towards what came before.
Yeah.
When you're pitching your game in an interview to Donkey Kong fans, you don't want to say, oh yeah, the Donkey Kong characters, the Donkey Kong cast, well, they're all shit, aren't they? Yeah, we really created better ones for this game.
Yeah, the old ones, they weren't fresh enough. All we need is the banana and I guess the title character.
Which keep in mind, the characters were only about a decade old at this point. I mean, the extended Donkey Kong Country cast. So when you say they're not fresh enough for today, of course, I think one of the big points brought up on the forum was, well, what about the Mario characters who are like 20 years old? What about? I mean, how is it that it's our cast that's not fresh enough?
Yeah. And I think it's also strange saying we don't need a superfluous story. I mean, we read between the lines a lot as far as story goes, but if you really look at the mechanics of the stories for the Donkey Kong Country series, they're not superfluous. I mean, they are kind of. They're not that complex, is what I'm trying to say. Like, there's no reason this one couldn't just have a pretty simple premise and then get on with it. You know, this one it doesn't even really bother to give Donkey Kong a reason. We had to kind of invent that, didn't we?
Well, the thing is, there is actually a story that they just don't bother telling you. Like, there is a story in the game, and actually, in the new play control version, they do include a story that pretty much ties into what we came up with based on just the inference of events in this game. So, I think, like, they were not telling the truth. They did have a story in this game. They just didn't bother writing it in the instruction manual. Like, I don't understand where they're coming off. Like, they didn't have cinematic scenes. They didn't have anything like that, but neither did the original Donkey Kong Country games, besides maybe 3, so...
It's just strange how they're bragging on their lack of a story.
Yeah, and
why would that be a selling point? I don't get it.
I know, but this was this weird era of Nintendo where there was almost this pride in we innovate and we're all about the gameplay. And you saw this reflected through Nintendo's hardcore fans. And we're Nintendo fans here, but we're rare fans. We wear many hats here at DK Vine. So we're not like the Nintendo loyalists that lap up everything they say as if it came from a burning bush, which you don't want to lap up anything from a burning bush because you will go to the emergency ward.
Right.
Just a pro tip out there for any aspiring Bible characters.
Yeah, you'll be spending the night in All Saints of Judea.
Yeah, so I don't know. It was just the Nintendo fans would parrot this as, gameplay is first, story is second. And I'm not disagreeing with that. Yes, a game has to have good gameplay. If you have an awesome story and shit gameplay, it's going to be miserable. But I think it's also a misnomer to say story isn't important. And I think since we're so continuity minded at DK Vine, we celebrate the absurdity of this shared universe we discuss. This is exactly what we didn't want to hear. This was just poison to our ears, and at a time when we didn't need this poison being fed to us. And granted, this was a translated interview. Maybe the actual interview came off as far less asshole-ish in native Japanese. I don't know.
It's tough to tell because we're basically at the mercy of. Was this an official translation? Because it was from Nintendo Online Magazine in Japan.
It was on IGN, so...
Oh, okay.
I think it's as official as we could have gotten as a Western audience. But, there's been interviews with Sakurai where he comes off as a smug dick. And, and that could be chalked up to translation errors or just, context not coming across through the language barrier. So, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to sell these guys, short. Maybe they weren't being as needlessly cruel to the hardcore fan base as they come across.
What we're saying is we want to give these shitheads the benefit of the doubt.
These fuck twats, yeah. I don't know, but it definitely kind of killed any goodwill we had to this game. I mean, even today, stuff like the banana. As a character unto itself, fresh. I mean, these are still talking points on DK Vine, and usually in jest. Usually a good time is to be had when this is brought up. But
yeah,
this is what 11 years later, and it's still kind of a scar on our souls. So,
right. And thankfully, we did get a proper continuation of the Country franchise, and it's telling that this game does not have country in its title. So It's not even, it is a 2D platformer starring Donkey Kong, but it's not, in a way, it's not trying to be a faithful installment in the Country franchise.
Well, it is and it isn't. Right. It is and it isn't, because the inspiration was clearly the country games, and that's why what I find so hypocritical about their statements. Clearly, they didn't have a problem with the general aesthetic and the general ideas of the country games. They were just saying, well, these designs, these characters are all shit. We can do better. And just when you have a franchise handed to you, and you're making a new installment of that, yes, bring your own ideas, bring your own characters, but you've also got to pay tribute to what came before, or else you're going to get off on a terribly wrong foot.
I don't even think you need to pay tribute to it. It doesn't just need to be a nostalgic reference point. I think what you can do, though, is let the past inform what you're trying to do, even if it's even if it's only thematic. Okay. Look at Returns.
I think Returns is the best comparison we have with this game. I think retro. Yeah, we complain they didn't go far enough, and Tropical Freeze was obviously a huge improvement in that regard. But thematically, it felt like a Donkey Kong Country game. It felt correct, and and it did reference the past. It had returning characters, not enough for our taste, but you know what? I was happy with it at the time. I still like it. Tropical Freeze blew it away, and I love Tropical Freeze. I think Tropical Freeze was a better attempt at doing what we're saying needs to be done. This game,
the Returns did so much right that this game did not, that we were able to overlook the fact that it also had non-traditional controls.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's weird how, I think if it wasn't for this interview, if they would have come out and framed everything they did in this game in a completely different way, and said, we love the characters from the country games, but, blah, 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 find a justification for what you're saying. Do not give the fan base a reason to hate you and your product. And granted, I think at the time they thought the Donkey Kong Country fan base was non-existent, and to be fair, well, let's get into this because.
Before you do, we should probably take another call. We do have 6 total calls this episode.
Oh wow! Okay, well, that's fine. Let's take a call. I have stuff I want to say. But fine.
All right. Put a pin in it.
Hey, it's me, the Metch, and I have
the Metch
question today for your Donkey Kong Jungle Beat episode. So, I first want to explain what Donkey Kong Jungle Beat means to me. So, I'm younger than you guys. I'm like 20. So, one of my first Donkey Kong games was DK64, honestly, and I loved that game. So, who thought? Once the GameCube came out, I wondered if there was going to be a Donkey Kong game for it. And first came Donkey Konga, which was alright, I guess. Gotta ask Hyle about that one, but then came Jungle Beat, which I like it as a game, but I could just feel something was off with it. The whole atmosphere, everything about it, something just felt off. That's what I'm saying. Now then, my question is, what if that was a success? What if that was a million-seller game? What if that's the direction that the DK series took? Just what if never got returns, and this became the new focus? No more Diddy, no more Cranky. This was it. Tell me, what kind of world are we living in? Goodbye.
Remarkable show of restraint, Mamechi. I do appreciate the call.
I like how he just said, tell me.
Yeah, do it.
Well, this actually does tie into what I was just about to say, so good timing. Good timing, the match. Are all of our callers going to be start with the?
They might.
We had the SAF, now we have the match.
Well, we're on a roll. We'll have to see.
I hope the Tom Hanks podcast guy calls back.
Oh, you mean the Elvis?
The Elvis? Is that what?
Yeah, that was his name.
Oh, Elvis. Okay, yeah, from Hanksgiving podcast.
Right.
So yeah, after the buyout, it definitely felt like the soul of Donkey Kong was up for grabs by these warring factions of Nintendo, and this is what it felt like because Rare had such a definitive take on the character and his world that we thought at the time differed from Miyamoto's own. So when you remove Rare from the equation, suddenly you worry that, they're just going to try to revert it all back to the arcade era. And, well, in the span of 2 years, we did have an attempt at that because we had Mario versus Donkey Kong, which was, the first game at least, was an arcade throwback where DK was a grinning villain idiot.
Well, that game actually went to some lengths in the, I guess, the PowerPoint presentation that served as a story, to show that DK was hypnotized by...
That's our fanon justification for it.
He looked at a TV and got hearts in his eyes. Something was going on. There's a little more open to interpretation, but at least it did try and justify his actions in that game, is what I'm trying to say.
It did, but it also sold him short because he became a villainous kidnapper over his love for a little toy, like little toy Mario's at that. Like it was a stupid story. But anyway,
honestly, if they had tried to do a reboot of the arcade series along the same lines as Donkey Kong 94, I probably would have been way more into it. Yeah. I mean, say what you will about Donkey Kong's characterization, but they could have figured a way to do it. But that game. It was the natural evolution of the arcade series. And then Mario vs. Donkey Kong had such potential, and then it just turned into a Lemmings/Pipe Mania clone.
Yeah, now it's an amiibo cash grab series. We need to discuss at some future episode.
Yeah,
the new entry in that series, because we need to have a debate about if it fits into the DKU or not. Anyway,
I don't think it does, but we'll have that debate.
We'll have that debate because I'm kind of on the fence. So we had Mario vs. Donkey Kong, an arcade throwback at the time. We had Donkey Konga, which was a rhythm game, but one that utilized both imagery from Donkey Kong Country games and Donkey Kong 64.
Right.
You had Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which we're discussing this week, it was a platforming game that basically just swapped out the characters from the country games on an almost one-to-one basis, seemingly out of spite or arrogance. And it also reinterpreted Donkey Kong as a violent maniac. You had Peon's games, which were faithful in characters and the world, if not in tone.
Not entirely. Cranky Kong was significantly nerfed.
Faithful in the characters it used, but not in the tone in which they were all presented.
Okay.
But for the most part, it was good. Cranky Kong was weirdly kind in those games, but everything else was pretty much, I think, acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm. I think he was just happy to be seen.
He was just happy that Wrinkly was still dead. Or no, her ghost visited him, and it was like that scene in Ghostbusters where Dan Aykroyd has the dream about the ghost giving him the blowjob.
That's a dream?
That was a dream, yeah. It was originally in the movie as not a dream, and they thought it didn't really fit the tone, the style of humor of the movie, so they decided to make it a dream sequence, so they wouldn't have Ray Stantz getting a Hummer by a ghost.
For some reason in my memory, that's just a canonical scene. It's been a while since I watched Ghostbusters. I need to get back to it.
You need to watch Ghostbusters. Is great, man. You need to watch it.
I fucking love Ghostbusters. And yeah, it's been a long time. It's one of those movies. It's like the Indiana Jones series. I haven't seen it in like 5 years, but it's I feel like I can close my eyes and watch most of it. I just misremember that bit.
Man, I wonder if the new Ghostbusters movie will be that franchise's Jungle Beat, considering they are just switching out the characters. And anyway,
I think they really only want to keep the fresh characters like the Ghostbuster and the banana.
The proton
the Twinkie, the Ghostbuster and the
Twinkie, yeah. So, and then you had, oddly enough, you had Rare's Game Boy Advance remakes during this time as well, which, how weird was it? I'm still baffled that Rare continued to influence the Donkey Kong series several years deep into the Buyout Era. Like we had this like mental image of them just being gone from the series at this point, but no, from Microsoft, they were still making these remakes for the portable devices. So
yeah,
you had like these wildly, differing tones and attempts at making the series what they wanted to make it. And so there's no tonal consistency at this time.
Yeah, it's so like a tug of war between these different objectives.
So it really felt like whatever like attempt was the most successful was going to be the direction Donkey Kong took. And honestly, I think the sales figures showed that like the Game Boy Advance remakes that Rare made were wildly successful, like 1 million sellers at least, much more so than the Bongo games. So
yeah.
Ultimately,
well, the Game Boy Advance was wildly more successful than the GameCube.
True. And so, and this is a game that you had to either buy with the peripheral included or had to already own the peripheral. So Jungle Beat had that hindrance coming out of the gate. But, so naturally, we were very hostile towards Jungle Beat more than any others, because Jungle Beat represented, as the Mitch said, it represented something that threatened to erase all the characters we loved and held dear. And so with the team's comments, with the producer and the director's comments, it felt like Jungle Beat were shots fired in a war. That a war, again, for the soul of Donkey Kong. And that made Jungle Beat enemy number one. And you know, looking back, and this is a point I think I brought up on the show before, it seems like anything that's really successful in pop culture, like Donkey Kong Country was, the decade that follows sees an attempt to tear it down. And
yeah.
It doesn't always happen, but more often than not, you definitely see, as there's a slight generational shift, as the people who loved something as a kid age up into their 20s, and you have a new generation of kids, while the generation that preceded that are in their 30s and have no fondness for that series or whatever came in that following decade. There's definitely seems to be this, you're kind of pushed out of pop culture. And it isn't until you age up into your 30s, the following decade, that you can then re-embrace that and bring it back as nostalgia. And
well, part of it is also that, you know, during these generational, like sub-generational shifts, you also usually have a different group of people making the games. And, you know, they very fairly want to put their own creative stamp on things.
Yeah. No, and I'm not just talking about games, though. I'm talking about anything in pop culture.
Okay, yeah.
And, you know, it's like how, you know, the X-Files, for example, was nobody gave a shit about the X-Files the previous decade. It was routinely shat upon. And then you hear they're bringing it back, and everybody's like, "Oh, the X-Files! I love the X-Files!"
Yeah, all those rose-tinted glasses just enraged me.
But it's also nostalgia. It's nostalgia makes something cool again. But you have to have that grace period of almost 20 years at this point. Doctor Who was off TV, and granted, Doctor Who was around for like 30 years before it was canceled. But you know, it never had a chance to really fall, you know, off the public radar until that point. And then it was like, you know, just completely non-existent besides spin-off media and some other things.
Hugh Grant tried.
But then it came back and it was wildly successful. So, you know, Donkey Kong Country was no different. And of course, us being in our early to mid 20s at this point, we didn't have that context. We hadn't lived through something like this. And this felt like our childhood was under attack. It really, I mean, it felt like the NES generation and the GameCube generation were teaming up to shit upon like everything we held dear. So
yeah, and the last vestiges of that was still like trickling out via the ports coming out of Rare. So it was, it was tense.
So it was a weird era. We're mostly past that. You still get like misconceptions to this day, but for the most part, I think our series Donkey Kong Country is warmly embraced today. But enough about the cultural context behind this game. Let's talk about the game itself, okay?
Well, before we do that, let's take another call.
Let's take another call. Our listeners are more important than me. Blah, blah, blah.
What's up? What's up? Do you remember that from the 90s? I'll tell you what's not from the 90s. That's Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. I've only played the Wii version, and I found it a bit boring and shit, so do you guys recommend trying out the Bongo GameCube version?
Do you guys recommend terminating this episode?
Yeah.
Nah.
By the way, this is Kev off Rare and Friends, and Matt off DK Vine. Matt, you had an interesting boss theory, didn't you?
What?
Go on.
Don't know what you're on about, mate.
The last boss of Jungle Beat.
Right.
What were your point?
You know how in Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, there's two separate final bosses, Cactus King and Ghastly King. Right. You know how you consider them separate characters? Is it not interesting to you that in the Japanese version they have the same name, which I think translates to Final Kong? I'm not bored with saying this, even as I'm saying it.
Okay, so I've never reached the last boss, so I don't really know. But are they like two separate entities or what? Or does it transform mid?
They look exactly the same, and in Japan they have the same name.
They look exactly the same in Japan.
That's a bit racist.
Yeah, it's a bit.
That kind of correlates with the K. Rool thing, though, doesn't it?
Right, the way that in Japan some people consider K. Rool to be separate characters, depending on... I'm bored. I'm bored of this call, Kev. Why are we calling?
Food for thought, boys.
Waterman, sweating your wrists.
Happy Cop Cop Day.
Cock me up, Cog! Oh, I meant to say cock. Oh, what was it? Oh, I've forgotten it. Doesn't matter. Happy Pancake Day.
Yay! Bye. 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 Bye.
Cook me up, Cobb. Yeah, so, Kev, stay the hell away from Matt. He is a treasure, but he's our treasure.
Oh, that was like a two-headed dragon calling in, man. I felt like I had to answer. I feel like I have to answer a riddle, or else it won't let me pass.
Yeah. So, yeah. The answer is gorilla kind. It goes on four legs, and then two, and eventually, as Cranky Kong proved, three.
So okay. I first I'll answer Kev's question. The Say's question. Yeah, I think the Wii version is not necessarily bad, but it completely nerfs the charm of the GameCube version. And this is kind of a hard sell to people who have never played the GameCube version. So I think I need to describe what the gameplay is. So in the GameCube version, the original Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which this is a Spotlight episode for, in a future installment, we'll do a Spotlight episode for the Wii version.
No, we won't. No, we won't.
Yes, we will. I promise.
Oh, I'll have long quit this nonsense by then.
Season 32.
Oh, okay. It's a date.
Chad, I'm going to keep you alive. You're going to be on life support, and I'm just going to like wheel up a microphone to your face, and it'll just beep, beep. Oh, really, Chad? Beep, beep.
It'll be our best episode ever.
Our best season ever. Mm-hmm. So in Jungle Beat, you control your character with the DK bongos of Donkey Konga and Donkey Konga 2 fame. And it's a 2D platforming environment, but I think the hard sell, what people don't realize is despite being a platformer, it's still actually very much a rhythm game. It's kind of a music game without the music. It's more of a dance. It's a dance game because you have to collect bananas, which are referred to in this game as beats. So the banana is not actually even referred to as the bananas; they're referred to as beats.
What?
Yes, because
I was not aware of this.
Because you have to collect the beats in the most artful way possible without touching the ground. So the longer you kind of can stay afloat, either by kicking walls, bouncing on enemies, ricocheting off banandalions, which are the flowers that grow in this game.
Shouldn't they be beat-dalions? Well, why are we portmanteauing a fruit that doesn't even exist in this game?
No, they're actually bananas, but they're referred to colloquially in the faraway lands as beets.
Oh, okay.
So you fling yourself off banandalions, which is the most forced portmanteau I think I've ever seen.
Oh, I've heard worse. That one. I'm signing off on banandalions.
Joe Mentum. That was pretty good. Joe Mentum.
Yeah, Joe Mentum's good. Yeah. Now I give banandalions the DK Vine stamp of approval.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I'm overruling you on this one.
You can't overrule me. We're 50-50, man. You have to bring in the other staffers to really like overrule me. Anyway.
Yeah.
Matt, Cameron, Nick, Jeff, Joe, let us know. So anyway, yeah, but banandalions, and then you also have the helper monkeys, aka the capuchins, to give you a hand. So basically, you're trying to collect unbroken combos of collecting beats. And the more you build up, the more the game actually encourages you and kind of gets into a frenzy. And they do this with sound effects and chanting. And so this is where the infamous go, go, go comes from.
Yeah, that sounds exciting.
Okay. This is a game that if you watch this game, it's going to piss you off. It's going to be migraine-inducing. This is only something you can really experience if you actually play it with bongos, and then you kind of get sucked into it. But on the surface level, if you've just seen YouTube videos, if you've just seen it on like in-store kiosk back in 2005, you're going to hate this game because it looks like a fucking nightmare.
It sounds like the kind of thing, just the sensory assault that would be at home in an arcade.
It very much feels like an arcade game, but I would argue it's only a sensory assault if you're not playing it. It's engrossing if you're actually at the controls. And it takes a while to get the hang of using the bongos because it completely combats every natural instinct you have playing a platforming game. But once you actually understand and get inside this game's head, it's actually quite delightful. And
really?
Actually realizing how much fun this game was pretty damn sobering. I have to admit.
Hyle, it's interesting to hear you say this because you tend to limit the types of games that you put in front of yourself based on the Donkey Kong universe. But the fact that you were able to look past this game's superficial mistakes and really enjoy the core gameplay tells me that you might actually enjoy a lot more non-DKU games than you think you would.
No, because I also got off on trying to fan-wank things, trying to figure out where this took place in the canon. Don't get me wrong, I got my usual fix from a lot of DKU-ness in this game, but I actually really had a blast playing it as well. It wasn't like a slog like Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze where I'm like just trying to get through the absurdly terrible play control. And no, I actually enjoy playing this game, but I also got a lot out of fan wanking. So a little bit of a give or take there. The fact that it starred Donkey Kong, even if it was a Donkey Kong that was seemingly out of character, it helped kind of. It was the cherry on top of the sundae.
Okay.
Now, so let's talk. Speaking of fan wanking, can I bring up the story?
If you must.
Both the story as presented in, I guess, the Wii version, and also the story that we ascertain, or at least I ascertained from playing this game, and I do mean ass. So again, there's no story provided in the GameCube version, but
let's talk about it.
The Wii version explains that basically these rogue enemies took over. And by the way, it's never really officially declared what the lands that this game takes place in are called. For the longest time, we called them the Fruit Kingdoms because they are literally kingdoms named after fruits. You have the Banana Kingdom, the Orange Kingdom, etc.
Right.
In Donkey Konga 2, which came out right after this game, at least in North America, Dixie keeps mentioning visiting the faraway lands. And so I just lazily said, okay.
Yeah. So Dixie has been to this insane place as well.
Yeah, she took a cruise there. So
okay.
So anyway, this group of enemies, and this is where Matt's question comes into play. So this group of enemies, they're led by, at least in the West, two guys named Cactus King and Ghastly King, which are Kongs that are. The easiest way to explain it is they're gorilla plant hybrid creatures.
Are these are they also outer space monsters? Because I know that later in the game there's some space elements. I've seen these on the your Saturday night screen grab of Spaciness on Facebook.
Yes, thanks for the plug. No, they you do go into space in this game, but I don't think there's any correlation between these enemies and space. And maybe in Japan there is, but again, when you don't provide translations of any original Japanese text, you kind of just have to infer what you're given. And to answer Matt's question, the K. Rool are they brothers in Japan? Is King K. Rool and Captain K. Rool, are they brothers in Japan? Actually, we're still not really certain on that because we know, like, we know that that's actually might not be the case, and that might just be a complete misunderstanding of whoever wrote the trophy bio in Smash Brothers, not having ever played a Donkey Kong game.
Maybe that's why they didn't want to put K. Rool in Super Smash Brothers for Wii U and Super Smash Brothers for Nintendo 3DS, because they didn't want to take up 3 character slots.
4 if you include the boxer.
Yeah, King Crusher K. Rool.
And then you've got his baseball design where he's kind of dressed like a pharaoh.
We call him Khufu K. Rool, I believe.
Yeah, and then you have his unfortunately non-canon pilot appearance in Diddy Kong Pilot. Anyway,
the Baron K. Rool. Yeah, the Red Baron K. Rool in Stein.
Right,
I don't know what we would have called him.
And anyway, so you have these plant hybrids. So the story of Jungle Beat that is actually in the game is that there's been this coup in, let's call them the faraway lands, where there's this group of rogue enemies, this coalition of evil Kongs and other creatures have staged a coup here and taken over these lands. And there is a sacred tree, which is actually a character in the instruction booklet called the Sacred Tree that you visit after each kingdom. And depending on your performance, how many beats you've collected, and if you were successful, the Sacred Tree gives you a crest. Bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And basically, if you've gotten a platinum crest, then you're declared the king of this kingdom. Because
that sounds like some new age Avatar type bullshit.
Which, yeah, hey, that's funny. I had that exact sentence in my notes.
It's almost as if I'm reading it verbatim.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it is a whole idea of a sacred tree, and this is, by the way, the sacred tree sends out fairies to also aid you in your quest, and they're called combo fairies because they help you continue your combo of beats. So basically, the whole thing is, if you're in touch with nature, man, if you've been able to find the right rhythm in the jungle, and you've collected all these beats, it shows you are the most in touch with nature, and you are the rightful king of this kingdom, dude.
Hang on, tell me a bit more about these combo fairies. But do they take the form of bananas with wings?
No, they are just little like pink and blue like dots.
Oh, okay. Screw that. I was thinking maybe this was something that Retro Studios would capitalize on later.
No. There are winged bubbles with bananas inside of them in this game, but there are no winged bananas.
Wait, the bubbles have wings? They can't just float because they're bubbles?
Japan Magic Creative, Chad.
Let's take another call. We do have a few more to get through.
All right.
I want to say is Happy Cop Day. I know initially for Patreon supporters listening to this, it won't be Saturday, so it won't be Cop Day, but it will be for most people. So again, Happy Cop Day. Second thing is, I am very glad you guys are finally giving a spotlight look at DK Jungle Beat, because even though I know it's a little infamous around the community, I actually very much enjoy Jungle Beat. I know it's weird, but I do. And so what I want to know is, what are your favorite parts of Jungle Beat, or more specifically, what do you find the most interesting or innovative about it? Like, I actually really like how experimental it is, because you could be doing something in one level and then something completely else in another. Like, I think that one level in the snow where you're doing this weird, like, ski jump with the boar, I think that's actually a pretty fun level. And then I found the chopper bird race very interesting, even though the chopper bird ends up being some sort of weird guy in a costume. Anyways, though, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Okay. Happy Cop Day. See ya.
Cock me up, cop.
Cop me up, Cobb. That was, by the way, the ACZ. I think the first part of his call got cut off, but our hotline has caller ID.
We know where you sleep.
Yeah, it also has that.
Yeah, well, my favorite parts of Jungle Beat, honestly, like, it's kind of a blur at this point. I do definitely think, I enjoyed the boss fights. I really enjoyed the boss fights. It's weird fighting something, especially like the knockdown drag out ones with like the evil Kongs, the Kiss Kongs as we call them. Because it's basically like having a bongo represent punching kind of turned it into a boxing simulator that was it was kind of an innovative use of the bongos. I have to give them that.
Yeah, I would. So yeah, I've only played it on Jungle Beat, so my mileage varies a bit as far as the boss fights go, but I would agree that is probably a better use of the bongos than a side-scrolling platformer. They honestly they could have just done a Punch-Out sequel on the GameCube with these bongo drums. It didn't need to have the DK license.
The problem is they branded them as the DK bongos. So
right.
And they
sort of shot themselves in the foot with that.
Yeah. And actually, like any game that was supposed to like utilize it, there's going to be like I think some sort of like pinball game, like military style pinball game. And that ultimately dropped DK bongo support. So yeah,
military pinball. I would say the thing that I find the most interesting or innovative would probably be the combo system. I don't think it works well for a Donkey Kong Country style game because those are more about like rhythmic platforming, which I guess in a sense this is, but
this is rhythmic platforming, but it's a different form of it.
It's a high score based one, whereas
arcade, yeah.
Yeah, whereas the Donkey Kong Country series is more about exploration, and you're rewarded for that. But I think that it's a cool thing that they were trying to do. I just think it's the wrong license for it.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, I brought up the Kiss Kongs, and we call them the Kiss Kongs because they look fucking like Kiss. Gene Simmons.
One of them's even got a little kitty cat face paint.
Yeah, Gene Simmons' successful capitalist venture / band.
What are their names?
All right,
Kiss
so
Kongs.
So they are Dread Kong, Karate Kong, Ninja Kong, and Sumo Kong. Which it's weird how three of them all like rely on like Asian martial arts, and then one of them is just a reggae dude.
Mm-hmm. Wait, you mean dreadlocks? Is that why he's called Dread Kong? Does he have dreadlocks?
Yeah, he has dreadlocks.
Oh, I thought it was sort of like the feeling of dread in the pit of your stomach, having to face a terrible boss in the first world. But no,
he's a Rastafarian.
He's a Rastaman. Okay.
Yep. So anyway,
Tally me banana.
I need to do a Sunday morning shot of spirituality for Dread Kong and how he follows the religion of anyway. So
Rastafarianism,
yeah. He thinks some dude is the Messiah who was which I guess is pretty much any religion.
I tell you what, man, Dread Kong knows the freshest character. It's the green.
All right. So anyway, they are like the lieutenants of Cactus King and Gaslight King. And to answer Matt's question that I still haven't gotten to, I think it's perfectly valid to have two separate canons. If you have a language barrier and you translate it, I don't think it should be the norm, but I think if that's what we're given, we can't discount it.
Okay.
In the Western canon, they are two separate characters, and if that's what we're presented, it's not something we can just kind of wave away and say, well, that didn't happen, because as presented to us, yes, they did happen. They're Cactus King and Gaslight King. So right. It's interesting that the whole premise of the game, and this is where I drew my ideas for the game, you are trying to win the approval of this sacred tree. But the people who did this coup d'etat in the faraway lands, Cactus King, Gaslight King, they're Kong tree hybrids. So I like how the idea, as ludicrous as this sounds, that they genetically experimented on themselves to supplant the will of the sacred tree and try to become sacred trees unto themselves.
Yeah, you're right. That does sound insane.
So anyway, Donkey Kong. This is kind of his Diddy Kong Racing because he hears about this injustice.
Oh, poor Donkey Kong.
I know, right?
This is his Diddy Kong Racing.
Because Diddy Kong Racing, he went north to Timbers Island upon hearing about Whizpig's insurrection. He went by himself, at least in the original game, didn't bring anybody with him. Donkey Kong heard about this injustice in the faraway lands. And by the way, I've determined that the faraway lands are the southernmost point in the Rare Archipelago. And
Really?
that's because at one point you see penguins. In a non-Arctic level, by the way, you just see penguins. And we know in South Africa, penguins live and come up and live in South Africa. So I like that.
Yeah, they are the seal food for the seals that feed the great white sharks.
Yes, so I like that this takes place somewhere far off the coast of South Africa. Southernmost point in the Rare Archipelago, at least at this point. So he heads south to the faraway lands to liberate them because these Kongs have gone rogue and he's got to put a stop to it. And he's helped there along the way by the native capuchin monkeys. That ultimately they kind of serve the same function as the oinks from the retro country games. They give play control advice. They also give you a helping hand. They serve many functions, and it's actually, even during the height of anti-jungle beatism, it was pretty much determined that the Capuchins were the best designed characters in the game, and that they could have come from a Rare game. So a lot of people, even who have anti-jungle beat opinions, still like the Capuchins.
Mm-hmm.
So we should take another call.
Yeah, let's take we have two more, so we'll try and space them out because we are nearing the end, but we have a lot to get through, I feel like.
Yeah.
Hey there, Chad and Hyle. It's Malik once again, and I'm here to share a little bit of my experience with Donkey Kong Jungle Beat for that Spotlight episode you guys are recording. If this comes in a little bit too late, feel free to just disregard this call. But anyway, I really love Jungle Beat. I love it so much. I remember I first got it at a used game store on August 9th, 2008. I know this because the night after there was like a propane explosion in my neck of the woods up in Canada, but that's not important. And also, when I actually got it, let's see, I came home, there was a disc, it was Donkey Konga, I went back to the store, got Jungle Beat, and I'm so glad I did. Because I just love how delightfully weird this game was and just how crazy violent it was. I mean, it's like if DK got up one day and said, hey, what if I made myself a game? I mean, there's bananas, and I jump on things, and that's pretty much all I do, right? And I know it's not Donkey Kong Country, but, I mean, it's not DKC, it's Jungle Beat. It's its own beast entirely, and it's a really crazy, wild ride. I love the music, I love the cartoon violence, I love the fur that you can see on DK, and I have it for my GameCube, I got it for the Wii when it was re-released, and I always just love going back to that game just whenever I want to have a fun, simple time, or whenever I'm having a bad day and I just need to get the stress out in a fun way. Anyways, those are my 2 cents on the game. I know Chad isn't too fond of the game, but Hyle, I know that you kind of like it. But anyways, thanks for your time, you two, and I know that Cock Day, that holiday of yours, isn't until Friday, but I ate
Saturday
the other day, and I swear I'm hearing something outside. Who the heck is outside my window? Okay, whatever. Pray for me, guys. Bye.
Father Cobcock is coming to get you, kids.
To be fair, Malik, Cobcock Day is Saturday, but Father Cobcock will come to get you on Cobcock Eve, which is Friday. So
make sure you don't eat any meat, Malik.
Chicken.
I hope you get this message in time. Oh, is it just chicken?
Foul meat. You can eat other meats, but yeah, don't eat any foul meats.
Yeah, you better retreat if you're eating meat. Well, hey, the song just says meat, and that is a long-standing Cobcock Day carol.
Look at the original lore of Cobcock Day, Chad. I'm just saying.
I'm sorry. I haven't consulted the cocks of Turin.
So, okay.
Also, I feel bad that Canadian Hank Hill wasn't doing his job, but at least it was able to timestamp your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah, well, I'm glad you have a positive experience with it, Malik, and yes, I have come around on the game.
And to set the record straight, there are things that I like about the game. There are things that I dislike about it. And I really don't feel like I've played it enough to judge it too harshly. So everything I say is with that massive asterisk.
All right. Well, I want to get to before we wrap things up, because I don't really have a lot to say about the levels themselves. I just want to get through some of the characters of the game.
Oh, sure.
And kind of give my final thoughts on it, because we have a storied history with this beast, Chad, and I want to squash my beef, bury the hatchet. I want to make peace.
Well, you're allowed to squash beef before Cobcock Day, apparently.
You are. Just don't squash any Cornish hens. Which I don't know. Maybe Joe would know about Cornish hens.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny that why didn't we refer to Cobcock as a Cornish hen? He literally is a Cornish hen.
That's hilarious, actually.
I'm just annoyed that it took me that long to realize that was a ready-made pun that we just ignored all these years.
To be fair, maybe that was intentional. I don't really know the thought process behind the creation of
No. The only reason we call him Cobcock is because the Japanese is literally kabu-kaku.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's nowhere near as clever as a Cornish hen.
But Cobcock has a certain poetry to it that... I think
it sounds vulgar, but it's not.
I think the bluntness of Cobcock really gives it its weight. Anyway, so
by the way, I need to get out this anecdote. In Houston, my first tech job, they did a new employee hire dinner, and it was it was in the spring, so Cobcock Day had just come and gone, and it was like a +1 dinner for all the new hires, including the CEO of the company, the VPs, and Janelle took that opportunity to not only out me as, the co-proprietor of a Donkey Kong fan site, but also mentioned Cobcock Day to a bunch of people that had no context for it and that I then had to work with for several years.
To be fair, they will celebrate the holiday too. It's coming back.
Yeah. No. They were all rocking around the Cobcock Rock within a year's time.
So I want to talk about the animal buddies of the game. Oh, excuse me. Mario Wiki would have my head, because the instruction booklet of this game calls them jungle buddies. And because of that, Mario Wiki refuses to list them as animal buddies. They have to list them as jungle buddies.
Hey, you know what? I don't have a problem with that, because we draw the line in the sand in some very strange places, and I feel like they might have something to this. Do not
defend these people, Chad.
This writhing aggregate of Mario fans.
These people. I'm going to call them animal buddies because that's what they are. And so the hypocrisy that you shit talk Donkey Kong Country, yet you have animal buddies in your game. Come on.
Well, that concept was fresh enough, just not the characters.
Shut up. So, Hoofer is the most well-known one, and I believe he was referred to as a boar or something earlier in one of our calls. He's actually a wildebeest. And
he's got those big old horns.
He is essentially the Rambi replacement of the game. When I said characters had a 1-to-1 replacement, kind of true. Hoofer is essentially the Rambi of the game. He doesn't really ram anything, but he serves the same purpose. He is the charge. He charges forward. Actually, the gameplay with Hoofer is also kind of similar to I think Ellie in Stampede Sprint. If you remember that. But
it was sort of, Stampede Sprint was essentially a minecart stage just using an animal buddy.
Right. But Hoofer, there's Orko, which is an orca, which great name, guys. Orca, by the way, these characters had
straight out of Masters of the Universe.
These characters have different names in Europe, at least initially, and then in the new Play Control version, I believe they reverted to their North American names. So there's this weird discontinuity in Europe with these characters' names. Just putting that out there because I don't want to leave out our... we have a lot of listenership in the UK and Germany and some other places, so yep. Sorry. Yeah, so Orko was an orca, and she was basically kind of the Engard replacement in this game. But she, again, didn't like barge enemies. She was just kind of essentially the Hoofer underwater, much like Engard is the Rambi that's underwater. And the interesting thing about Orko was she has babies that follow you.
Oh, she doesn't have babies in the game.
No, she has a pod or whatever you call.
I mean, she doesn't go through the act of having babies.
Oh no! Yeah, you have to deliver her babies for her. It's this really tense moment in Donkey Kong's career.
It's really cumbersome to do a surgical procedure with bongo blasts and claps.
He actually became an OBGYN as a result. Took inspiration from the Cosby Show and opened a clinic right below in his Banana Horde cave. Which, remember in the Cosby Show?
Oh my God, Bill Cosby or Cliff Huxtable was an OBGYN, wasn't he?
And he ran his he ran his clinic in his basement.
Oh God. Oh no. I totally forgot about that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's like wish fulfillment for Bill Cosby. And it was also a great way to have young childbearing actresses on the show like every week. So
Jesus Christ.
I know, the whole Cosby... When you realize the whole Cosby Show was just a way for him to rape the shit out of people.
Don't worry about picking up my office, Claire. I'm just gonna be a pottering around, seeing some patients. Don't bother waiting up. Blah.
So, wow, your Cosby's kind of atrophied, man.
Did I ever have a Cosby?
You have an impression for everybody. I mean, I give you shit, but you're a gifted impressionist, and that's a weak
case, not in point.
That's some weak Jello right there, man.
So it's like a pudding pop left out, just kind of melting on the radiator, and it kind of turns into a soup.
I have to be really drunk to do a good Cosby, or maybe it just seems good because I'm drunk. But anyway, Orko, the second canonically female animal buddy in the series, and the only one that we know of that has offspring. So kind of cool. Floral is the flying squirrel, and it doesn't really look like a flying squirrel. It looks more like just a red blob of shit. But Floral is a flying squirrel, and he's actually a replacement for, believe it or not, Quawks and Squawk, because he's just a downward drifter that you kind of ride down. Quawks and Squawk in Donkey Kong Country 2, not 3. And another comparison to Quawks and Squawk is Flurl also has a doppelganger that you meet halfway in one stage, and you have to jump onto the other one. And so we had to give him a fanon name, so we called him Sky, SQY, because
I hate that so much.
Yeah, well, Matt Corna and I devised that one.
No, it's fine. I just the spelling of it, just like it's like an ice pick in my brain.
You want to talk about portmanteaus, Chad? Because Flurl is a portmanteau of flying and squirrel, so we just went the other direction, much like Quawks and Squawk. So
couldn't they have just called him Rocky or?
I think Sky is the worst portmanteau you've seen.
Yeah, probably.
And then there's also hellibirds, and they're not birds from hell, helicopter birds. And they're actually not unique animal buddies. They are all drones. And I actually went through the idea of possibly naming all of the hellibirds you see, and I was talked down off my ledge during the slush fund. So we went through this whole debate. Are hellibirds actually animal buddies, or are they drones? And we came down on the side of drones. They serve the Squawks replacements of the game because you fly upwards in them, and there's even one level in the game where you have a race on hellibirds, so much like Screech's Sprint in Donkey Kong Country 2. All right, so real quick, let's just go through some notable enemies, and then I'll give my final thoughts.
Okay. Well, we also have one more call. Don't forget.
Well, okay. Notable enemies, one more call. My final thoughts. All right. So some notable enemies of the game, and again, no Kremlings in the game, but you could say the same thing about Retro. So hey, there are hogs. Hogs are the principal drones you encounter, and it's spelled HAWGS.
Oh yeah.
Hogs. They come in various shapes and sizes. Some breathe fire, which actually is referenced, maybe inadvertently, in Tropical Freeze.
Okay.
Some blow gusts of wind at you, but they are the most... And they seem to be just like beasts of burden that are trained by the main bad guys. Sometimes they ride in on hogs. So, actually, Cactus King and Gaslit King are riding a giant hog when you initially fight them. So...
It's funny that in the second world of Tropical Freeze, there are hogs that breathe fire at you.
I just referenced that.
Oh, did you? Oh, see, I don't pay attention.
Oh my God! Yeah. One ear and out the other. Yes.
Yeah. I was thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner.
Okay. There's rocks. There's rocks, not Dwayne Johnson's. Rocks. ROCS. They are literally the birds of Arabian myth. And yeah, they just took a character from folklore, stuck it in the game. There are Tusk. They are mechanical elephants that shoot cannonballs at you. So kind of, I guess, replacements for cannons, bazookas, other country enemies. You can't say really replacements because, I mean, enemies that shoot things at you are a standard trope. Just because
it's interesting because those tusks might even be replacements for cannons and bazookas and other country enemies.
Fuck you. Snow moles. Snow moles are... I think you've seen screenshots of these, Chad. They are the
blue... I know what all these things are. Yeah,
okay.
They're all fucking weird, but yeah.
These are the blue penis-shaped things that come out of the ground in snow levels. And they look like uncircumcised penises. If those penises were suffering from hypothermia and frostbite. But, they're things that exist, so thank you.
It's charitable to call them a mole. Is that an official designation or just something we came up with?
If you translate the Japanese, there's it's some version of mole, yeah.
Molukaku.
Cobcock. What can we say that we haven't already said about Cobcock? It is literally a chicken plant. It is a giant chicken head on a stalk. And
he's napping. Don't wake daddy.
So Cobcock actually inspired an earlier Jungle Beat meme that we had on DK Vine that Ozzy, Ben, and I cocked up. The winged guild corn monster.
Yeah. That is this. Well, I guess it's literally what it sounds like.
Because we were trying to come up with a fake Jungle Beat enemy that played on just the batshit insanity of what we were seeing, and Japan Magic Creative and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. I always forget that he has gills, because if you look at the image that was cocked up of the Winged Guild corn monster, there's what looks like a roast ham down in the corner, and I guess that's supposed to be gills.
I honestly, Ben made it. I just gave my input on what should be on there. I was like, I should have gills. I'm smoking a cigar.
Regardless, it's a classic DK Vine character.
Classic DK Vine character. We need to make him an IDARB. Hashtag IDARB.
Ooh, yeah. Agent Ape, get on it.
Yes, Agent Ape. Yeah, make the whole, like, where's Helmos? Come on, Agent Ape. It's not like you don't do enough already in Project Spark.
Yeah, this guy's like redefining the scope of what Project Spark can do,
breaking the boundaries of Project Spark so he can put Pocket Tails in the game.
He's doing things in Project Spark that I don't think Team Dakota is aware is possible. He's the Rare of Project Spark.
Yes, that's a good analogy. So anyway, Cobcock was infamous, and has only become more so now that we actually embraced him. We didn't embrace Cobcock until I went back and slush funded this game, and I was just like, you know what? Fucking Cobcock. Iguanagon, another weird ass character. It's a prehistoric beast that's some sort of centipede lizard mashup. It's a giant creature that chases you in snow levels and stalks you. Iguanagon.
You know, what's interesting about Iguanagon is that his name is obviously a reference to the dinosaur Iguanodon, but
right.
If you know a bit about the history of paleontology, Iguanodon Iguanodon was one of the first dinosaurs that was ever discovered and taxonomically identified, but they fucked up so Iguanodon has a spike for a thumb that was used as a defensive measure against predators, but the original paleontologist who dug him up thought that spike thumb was actually a bone that belonged on the Iguanodon's nose, and they sort of envisioned him as a much more... I mean, the Iguanodon is bipedal, but they sort of thought that Iguanodon was more squat, kind of like a lizard or alligator, which is sort of the way that Iguanagon kind of looks. There's this place in England that's like the Crystal Palace, and they have these really cool... It's like
Wait, isn't that where they went to smoke meth in Breaking Bad?
Yeah, that's why they fucked up the Iguanodon so badly. No, they created these sculptures. I mean, we're talking like late 1800s, and they maybe early 1900s, and there are these sculptures of early Iguanodon designs that are completely wrong, but they're still there. Yeah, it's interesting because what Iguanagon is sort of looks like that completely malformed Iguanodon.
Huh. Now I'm really sad they didn't put a jackalope in this game.
Right.
In the spirit of just mashing up things. By the way, one more thing about Copcock. Copcock also ties into my theory about the genetic manipulation between ape and plant, because Copcock could have been their test. They tested it on chickens, and they successfully made a chicken-plant hybrid. Anyway, there's also dance pandas. They are literally...
what are those?
They are pandas who dance. There are ninjapes, and the name pisses me off because they are not apes, they're monkeys, but whatever. They're capuchins who actually fight you. They're capuchins who have sided with Ninja Kong and attack you. And I think it's the level name is Battle on Storm Hill or Battle of Storm Hill. The music's in the Smash Brothers series, so it's kind of famous for that. But yeah, that's where the ninjapes attack you. And then there are the bosses, and I've already mentioned the Kongs. The bosses come in 4 different varieties: Kongs, Hogs, Rocks, and Tusk. And they're just giant-sized versions of Hogs, Rocks, and Tusk, which also come in drone varieties. So again, very country-inspired. We're just gonna make giant versions of our normal drones. So it's funny how much they can shit-talk country and yet obviously draw inspiration from it at the same time. There's one more enemy I do want to discuss before we take the last call.
Okay.
And that's Chopper Bird. And Chopper Bird was already referenced, I believe, by Malik. Chopper Bird...
we already have a Helibird. And,
right.
And again, we're not talking about one of my favorite video game characters, Karurin. So tell me, who the hell is Chopper Bird?
Chopper Bird is who you race in the Helibird race. And basically Chopper Bird, it's a dude in a bird costume. It's a dude with a goatee in a bird costume.
We have a goatee?
Yeah, we have the image in our gallery in the Jungle Beat section on DK Vine, so check it out. So this is my favorite part of fanon, and this is pure fanon, because this is obviously not intentional in any way, but he's basically Canary Mary of this game. So my fanon theory is he and Canary Mary are like compatriots, and they are part of this weird avian loving like society that has come to the Rare Archipelago to live among the birds and dress as birds and fly around and be weird.
Though Chopper Bird seems like he's wearing a costume, whereas Canary Mary is like a post-op bird lover.
Okay, but she's still committed. I mean, the commitment is there. I mean, so what? If Chopper Bird is pre-op, who cares? I mean, he's still living the life.
That's fair. That's a fair point. He identifies as an avian.
Okay, let's take this last call, and we'll wrap things up.
Okay.
Hey guys, this is Sunwood calling. Saw that tweet you sent out asking for questions and comments on Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. And as one of the forum's biggest fans of that game, I felt obligated to make a call. So yeah, I personally really like Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. And I think part of that is that I actually played it before I really got into the Donkey Kong series as a whole, let alone the DKU as a concept. I had never even heard of the site before. I remember when it came out, I thought it looked pretty neat. but I never bothered picking it up at full price. Then years down the road, at the height of my GameCube era nostalgia, not to mention my ever-present love of wacky peripherals, I decided to pick it up when I saw a cheap used copy at GameStop one day, and I thought it was a really fun and genuinely unique experience. And I didn't feel betrayed by it, not really paying attention to the series' roots because I had no connection to the series. And then a few years after that, I sat down and played Donkey Kong Country for the first time. I had played DK64 way back when I was really young and loved that, but even that, since I had never had a Super Nintendo, didn't get into the series as a whole, never had a big connection to the character outside of DK64, and Jungle Beat felt separate from that. But then I played DKC, and then DKC2, and around that same time I'd also revisited Banjo-Kazooie. So when I found DK Vine and saw that it was for all of those things, but yeah, now I'm starting to get off topic. Anywho, I know Hyle's opinion on the game has mellowed and that he appreciates it on its own merit, if not necessarily, part of the DK series. I was wondering, as far as story elements go, how do either of you guys feel about Helibird actually being a human, just in a bird costume?
Chopper Bird.
I'm trying to think if there are any other examples of human characters in mainline series games.
Canary Mary, kind of.
Melanie.
Obviously, you see DK and company interacting with human and humanoid characters, and plenty of spin-offs like Smash Bros. And Mario Party. That's in the arcade titles, but...
Oh, well, I think that he hit the 3-minute limit.
Well.
Thank you for the call, Sun Wukong. We appreciate it.
By the way, there's also the weirdos from Viva Pinata who dress up as piñatas.
Yeah, it seems like all the humans are trying to very half-assedly disguise themselves.
Yeah. So they could be part of this weirdo cult or whatever it is. But well, I find it interesting that you became a fan of Jungle Beat before the rest of the Donkey Kong series, and I think that was the biggest hurdle for me, because Chad, me, everybody else on DK Vine who were already there were like hyper obsessive fans. So this would have been like if J.J. Abrams like dropped everybody but Han Solo in the new Star Wars and didn't reference them, and but had I don't know, he did his own thing. I mean, he ripped off the New Hope, but he did his own thing. Created his own alien species, but he still had enough returning characters, and it still felt like a continuation of the story. So
yeah, it wasn't just fresh for freshness' sake.
Right.
It was also a retread.
But by the way, you brought up the space thing real quick. I did want to say that there's also a weird ancient alien mythos in the game itself. That
okay.
I don't think they're related to the actual Cactus King and Ghastly King, but there are these like tubes you find throughout the game, like these dragon heads that you get sucked through, and the final stage you go into outer space, and there are all these it's like the home of all these dragon tubes, and so I think there was a spacefaring race of dragon people who built these tubes. Anyway, so aliens, Chad, ancient aliens. Yes, I could have never made peace with Jungle Beat until Nintendo gave us Donkey Kong Country Returns. There was no way it would have happened.
Yeah,
and Donkey Kong Country Returns kind of was a salve on the burn. It was ointment for my wound. And I was able to then go back and appreciate Jungle Beat for what it was. And what it was turned out to be a really fun game, and I hated to admit it because the amount of venom I helped spew towards this game was I mean, my hands are dirty, and it turns out it's a great game. It's a great game, and
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember when you, Janelle, Ozzy, Ben, and Alistair and I were all in Houston the other year. I was talking about it with Ozzy Ben, and he agreed. It was like, yeah, Jungle Beat actually was pretty fun.
Yeah.
So it's not just me who came to this opinion, but at the same time, I'm not going to apologize really for how we reacted because, come on, it did seem like it was, as I said, shots fired in a war against Donkey Kong Country. And so it's only until after Nintendo brought Donkey Kong Country back that I can appreciate Jungle Beat. And I even want to see some of the characters come back. I would be okay if they incorporated, say, Hoofer into the main, Country series. So long as
it's not at the expense of Rambi.
No, I mean, and you could argue Ellie was at the expense of Rambi. I mean, if you had Hoofer and not Rambi, but you also had Squitter and Engard or Squawks or whatever, it would be fine. You'd never want to have the new at the expense of the old. You want to have new in addition to the old. And that's where Jungle Beat failed as far as winning over established Donkey Kong fans. But at the end of the day, I have to admit it's really fun. I think everybody should play it on the GameCube with bongos, the original version. It's a unique experience. I've never had a gaming experience like it. It's short. It's probably too short, but I think that the game never overstays its welcome, and so you're kind of just left satisfied and smiling at the end. But at the same time, fuck it all because it didn't have Diddy Kong.
Mummy, do you think Father Copcock will come?
You better watch out. You better not cry if you don't want a rubber beak in your eye. You better not sleep if you've eaten meat. 'Cause Father Copcock is coming to get you, kids. He's making a list, he's checking it twice. He'll find where you live, and you'll pay the price. Be good for your sake, 'cause there's no escape. 'Cause Father Copcock is coming to get you, kids. He's gonna find you, he's gonna Father Copcock is coming to get you, kids. Father Copcock is coming to get you, kids. Father Copcock is coming to get you, kids. Father Copcock is coming to get you, kids.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.